Next up, we have Alex Zhavoronkov. Alex Zhavoronkov is the founder and CEO of Deep Longevity, Inc., a global company developing a broad range of artificial intelligence-based biomarkers of aging and longevity. He is also the founder and CEO of Insilico Medicine, a leader in next-generation artificial intelligence technologies for drug discovery and biomarker development. Since 2015, he has invented critical technologies in the field of generative adversarial networks and reinforcement learning for generation of novel molecular structures with the desired properties and generation of synthetic biological and patient data. He has also pioneered the applications of deep learning technologies for prediction of human biological age using multiple data types, transfer learning from aging into disease, target identification, and signaling pathway modeling. Since 2012, he has published over 130 peer-reviewed research papers and 2 books, including The Ageless Generation: How Biomedical Advances Will Transform the Global Economy. Please join me in welcoming Alex to the stage.
Well, thank you, Patrika, for this generous introduction, and I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to present to you today, especially on my most favorite topic of longevity. So thank you, Michael Weiss, for this opportunity, because he specifically convinced me to talk about longevity today and not about our recent breakthrough in fibrosis, where we went from novel target and novel molecule all the way into IND-enabling studies, compressing drug discovery at Insilico. So I wear several hats. One is Insilico Medicine, and I'm a CEO and founder of the company. And I'm also the founder of a company called Deep Longevity, which is specializing on aging clocks. It's an emerging field, so if you haven't heard about the aging clock or deep biomarkers of aging, please do some research, because nowadays pretty much everybody is focused on this in the field of aging, longevity, and healthcare in general. Huge numbers of applications. We've spun this company out of Insilico, and it became independent. And then it got acquired by a company called Region Pacific. I'm going to talk about that. So you can find us at longevity.ai. And here is my QR code for WeChat. We're also very Asia focused. So quick disclaimer, since it has been acquired by a company called Region Pacific in Hong Kong. It's a publicly traded company, so not an investment advice. Do not buy the stock based on this presentation. Many forward-looking statements. However, what I want to talk to you about, and you should invest in your own health and longevity for the purposes that, once you reach the peak performance in your lifespan, everything is downhill, and it ends in a terminal finite end, regardless of how much money you make, regardless of what you do, what you achieve, it's all down there. So we need to figure out how to combat that, and it's a fundamental problem of nature. So we are designed to come into this world, grow, reach the age of ultimate performance, reproduce, take care of our young. So we got this time frame to take care of our young, maybe several times, but at the same time we decline and die. And one way to address that is prevention. So better behavior, sleep, exercise, diet, maybe some basic supplements. However, you are just going to shift this to the right slightly. So no yogi has escaped death or lived to 122, 23. Current record is 122 and a half. However, now many of us are data scientists and computer scientists. We've seen the revolutions in many other industries. Here, the progress is very slow, but it's not unsolvable. And we can probably try to imagine at this point in time, what do we need to do to be able to track, repair, and improve our performance possibly? Because currently, nature does not allow us to step on this curve of continuous improvement, unfortunately. However, we are trying to do that. And we need to do that in the most conservative and business-friendly way, so that we do not discredit the field. So for that, we need to have aging clocks. And aging clocks can be shallow, so very, very simple predictors of chronological age using different data types. The first ones were introduced in 2013 by Stephen Horvath out of UCLA. So he used a data type called methylation. It's a data type which relates to DNA, where multiple pieces of the DNA are methylated. So there are specific methyl groups that bind to DNA, and they either silence some genes or activate some genes, gene expression. So the first aging clock was proposed in 2013. It was 3.6 years medium accuracy. At the same time, pretty much another group published 3.9 years accurate aging clock using methylation data type. And then Peter is also in 2015 published the transcriptomic aging clock using gene expression data, 7.8 years accuracy. So how can AI help? So you're probably all familiar with deep generative learning. In 2016, we could already see a lot of companies and groups generating fake faces, deep fakes, from the original work by Ian Goodfellow in 2014 when GANs appeared. 2017, you can already see those faces were 100% computer generated. They do not exist in nature. And now we can use GANs to try to extrapolate those images into the future. We can age them, we can make them younger, we can introduce additional generation conditions, and not only do that with images, we can also do it with biological data types. And we do that a lot at Deep Longevity. So we also can combine it with reinforcement learning to help some of those systems learn strategy, have multi-agent systems. We do that as well. This technology can be used for biological age prediction and monitoring, biomarker development, biological target identification, molecular generation, that's what we do at Insilico, precision medicine, and even mental health and depression, motivation, behavioral modification. That's what I'm going to talk about today a little bit as well. So at Deep Longevity, we do age prediction primarily. We also do biomarker development. We do biological target identification to some extent, real-world data analysis, and mental health and behavioral modification. So you can see that even from those synthetic images, computer-generated images, we can still guess the age pretty much accurately. So a lot of those biological features are preserved, and AI actually identifies age better than humans do. We started, so I published quite a bit of work in this field, and this figure comes from my 2019 paper in the journal called Aging, where we explain how we apply deep learning to age prediction and where those predictors can be applied in healthcare. So we can pretty much, we can train deep neural nets with one neuron on output age pretty much on every data type that changes in time. And some of those are represented here. So transcriptome, proteome, methylome, imaging, EEG, activity, blood test, behavior even. And we can now combine many of those data types together that was previously not possible and train on massive longitudinal data sets to learn biology in the pretty much unprecedented way. Learn normal biology that kind of drives us from cradle to cradle using those age predictors. And later, we can use those age predictors to extract biologically relevant pathways, identify targets. So, those keys on the molecular piano that we can push with molecules in order for us to change the biological function of the underlying object. We can generate synthetic data and use those clocks for many, many purposes. And deep learning usually outperforms classical models, and they're much more versatile, and you can use them for many more purposes. So in 2016, I published our first paper on age predictors using blood tests. We use very simple peripheral blood tests that you would get from a visit to your physician. And we've achieved about 5 years, 5.5 years accuracy, mean absolute error, with reasonable R squared. We also published the transcriptomic aging clock at that time. It was 6 years accurate at that time. Later, we published microbiomic aging clock using gut microflora, so bacteria in your gut. We can also predict your age. We can predict age using facial images and even physical activity. So here is kind of the timeline of our papers. You can trace it back all the way to 2015. And our first published paper was in 2016. It's called Deep Biomarkers of Human Aging. You can see the altmetric scores were pretty high for this paper, so they made some splashes. And some of them are very highly cited. In 2018, we published several cool papers, one showing that smokers age faster than non-smokers using blood tests. We also published our first transcriptomic aging clocks applied to target discovery. So now we could predict the age of your muscle using transcriptomic data and identify actionable targets that we can tweak with molecules to combat muscle wasting during aging. So if you want to stay fit, one of the ideas to pursue is to identify some of those targets that cause muscle wasting and address them with pharmaceutical interventions. Recently, in 2020, we published the methylation aging clock. I briefly will touch on that. And the first psychological aging clock. So if you stay with me long enough, you'll see how you can modify your behavior to even behave younger. In total, we've developed more than 17 clocks, different variants of those clocks, primarily using this kind of data types. So hematological data, that's our workhorse data. We are deploying that in clinics, insurance companies. We also work with individual physicians, and we deploy it on the app. You can download the app and put your blood test in, and it will predict your age. Transcriptomic data, more complex, more difficult to get, but very, very useful. So I think out of the all data types out there, transcriptomic and proteomic data is the most useful data if I were to just select one. We also are looking at microbiome, medical history, behavioral aging clocks, methylation aging clocks, and photo aging clocks. So the first clock that we've developed 2015 and published 2016 was using just very simple 41 normalized markers from a peripheral blood test. We trained 21 different deep neural nets with just one neuron on the output, which predicted age. Then we stacked them in an ensemble and achieved pretty good performance of about 5.5 years accuracy. And there we started noticing that people who are predicted to be significantly older than their chronological age were generally sick. And people who were predicted to be younger than their chronological age were generally high performers. However, those were anecdotal studies where we had just a few people where we had this data, also us and people who consented to this and provided more data about themselves than just anonymized data that we used for the study. And we started looking at this data and noticed that there is huge correlation between predicted age and your state of well-being. So then we published another study. It's called population-specific biomarkers of human aging. So we compared multiple populations in terms of aging clocks, looked at how those clocks perform in different countries. And there we demonstrated that people who are predicted to be 5 years or older than their chronological age in generally have much higher probability of dying of any cause, so have higher hazard ratio than people who are predicted within their chronological age. And people who are predicted to be 5 years or younger than their chronological age actually have lower probability of dying of any cause, lower hazard ratio. And that was a pretty important finding. So now you can track your predicted mortality using a blood test, very simple blood test, well, series of blood tests, because you want to have this this data to come in a consistent way, and blood tests are very variable. So it's a good idea to do several of those. We also, as I've explained, published a microbiomic aging clock, 5.9 years accuracy. So now you can use your gut microflora to track your biological age. also predictive of mortality. And just recently, we published the most accurate, to our knowledge, in the world, methylation aging clock using deep learning. So deep learning, again, usually outperforms traditional methods that were originally used to design those clocks. And we got 2.7-year accurate methylation aging clock using deep learning. So now we're applying those clocks for a new concept called personalized longevity and longevity medicine, where instead of just tracking you in the context of the optimal performance for your age group, we look at how you compare to the optimal version of yourself for the entire lifespan. So what's your biological age? We also started collaborating, and this company invested in deep longevity originally with a company called Human Longevity in San Diego, and now they're also opening different centers in many other cities and countries, which provides you with a very comprehensive assessment every time you visit, and provides you with peace of mind, explains that you're either cancer-free or maybe they can find something. They generate about 150 gigabytes of data during every visit, whole body MRI, whole genome sequencing, and core labs. And when the core labs are taken, they also provide our aging clocks. And every time they follow up, they can also do the aging clocks using deep longevity. So I'll explain our workhorse aging clock called the blood age. So there we use very simple parameters from your recent blood test. You can see that there is no unexplainable features. Pretty much all of them are known to you and your physicians. Sodium, chloride, potassium, fasting glucose, bilirubin, albumin, creatinine, and ferritin. So those are very common features, and those tests are very cheap and abundant. So that's the benefit of using those clocks, also very interpretable. Now when we work with clinics, you can take a simple blood test at the clinic, request a report. The physician would review the report, suggest some changes to change some parameters that are very easily modifiable and can lead to you being recognized younger than your chronological age. And then you do follow-up. And now I'm going to kind of shift gears and talk about something really cool that we've just published. We tried to, I generally previously thought that most of the psychiatrists, unless you have a serious biologically induced psychological condition, were fraud. But learned the hard way that it's actually not true, and psychiatry is an extremely important science, and mental health is very important. We first published a study last year where we tried to connect your biological age and subjective age and psychological age. So trying to predict how your state of mental health and your behavior changes in time using very simple survey questions and predicting two features. One is psychological age, which is your chronological age in the optimal healthy state, and subjective age is how old do you feel. And then correlated that to the different diseases, state of depression, stress, anxiety, and biological age. And we've demonstrated that those are very predictive. Those predictors of psychological subjective age, they are actually predictive of mortality. Here, as I've mentioned, we've introduced two new features that we're predicting. One is psycho age, which is a predictor of chronological age in a healthy state, and subjective age is how old do you feel. So you rank yourself. We also decided to work with the parameters, the features that are used to make this prediction that would come from modifiable factors. So we removed all the non-modifiable factors, such as parental age. You cannot change that. Kids' age, you cannot change that already. Age of death of family members. And we also looked at the features that are not directly correlated with your chronological age. So, age of spouse, for example, would very easily give out your chronological age. So we try to look at factors that come from health status, education, physical activity, very important longevity expectations, knowledge of biomedicine, environment, social relationships, psychological support, personal beliefs, predicted psychological and subjective age, and then looked at how those predicted features correlate with mental health, physical health, happiness, productivity, and most importantly, longevity. And we took 50 features from survey data, features that came through this filter that I've just described, so modifiable and not related to chronological age, and built predictors of psychological or subjective age. So we used MIDAS. It's a midlife study in the US data set where a lot of people are surveyed every year, being asked different questions, and then sometimes even linked to different biological data types. We only used the anonymized survey data. It's publicly available, and pre-processed it, trained very simple feed-forward deep neural nets on those features, did some feature selection, feature engineering, went all the way down to 50 most important features, did the cross-validation, and then built those psycho-age and subjective age predictors. So now, using a very simple set of surveys, survey questions, I can predict your psychological age with 6.7 mean absolute error, and subjective age with 7.3 mean absolute error. So doesn't seem as accurate enough, but we are extremely different, right? And some of us die sooner, some of us die earlier, and we also feel and behave differently, depending on many factors. So we also demonstrated that if you are predicted to be 5 years or older, your hazard ratio increases. 5 years or younger than the chronological age, hazard ratio decreases. So it's actually behaving younger than your chronological age and feeling younger than your chronological age has certain benefits in the context of longevity and mortality. We also looked at the most important features and also linked them to the different to the different categories like personality, psychological beliefs, personal well-being, demographics, health, and demonstrated the importance of each one of those. And we also noticed that longevity expectations, so how long do you expect to live, play a tremendous role in both psychological age prediction and subjective age prediction. So if you want to come up with something from this lecture that you can immediately use, is optimistic attitude towards health and longevity decreases both psychological and subjective age. So if you religiously convince yourself, so self-deceive yourself that you are going to live considerably longer than you currently expect to live, and you usually form your longevity expectations based on family history or average life expectancy in the country, you can actually very easily do that. And my recommendation is go and learn about longevity. So we're trying to build a longevity ecosystem right now, trying to link insurance, clinics, and employers together to provide new services to the customers where their interests are aligned, where they want to live longer and perform better. We introduced recently the Introduction to Longevity Medicine course on Udemy. You can take it. There is also a free version of that course at longevity.degree. There you can also get a certificate. And why we decided to become a public company and decided to sell ourselves to Regent is to actually be able to create this ecosystem where we can also use the company stock sometimes to expand the network. And again, I encourage all of you to think this way. So how do we get on the path of continuous improvement? Track, repair, improve within the very credible business model and an interconnected ecosystem. We cannot just wait for it to happen and let the others do it. We need to all engage. So thank you very much. And I hope that you can continue on this path. Finally, we are running the largest conference on aging and longevity in the world in Copenhagen this year. It's on site, 31st of August to 3rd of September. Go to agingpharma.org to see that conference. Thank you very much. Happy to connect, and I encourage everybody to get into this exciting field because it's more important than money. Thank you.
What a great session. Thank you, Alex.